Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who's built a career in the mortgage business by doing things his own way, staying grounded in his community, and focusing on relationships over shortcuts. He's seen multiple market cycles and has quietly but consistently highly performed his business along the way. Greg Anderson, welcome to the Lowdown.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Connor. This is
Absolutely.
super awesome. I'm honored to be part of this.
Well, it's a pleasure having you, and it's an honor to have you. And I know you'll bring a lot of insight today to the conversation. Just getting to know you in the short time leading up to this, I can, tell you're a true professional and, really a master of your craft and someone who's been intentional about building their business. And so you'll add a lot to the audience that's listening to this, trying to figure out a way to grow or listening for that one thing that they could use to tweak in their own business and things like that. And that's what the Lowdown's all about. So
Yeah.
you've been in the business for, I don't know, a little over 20 years.
hmm
And, as we've talked, you break your career into three phases. Each phase has a title. If you
Yeah.
don't mind, for the audience, like, what would you call each phase and why?
Well, the funny thing is, I started in the latter half of 2005, and so going on 21 years here. That first phase was very interesting because I started at WAMU, Washington Mutual, for people that have been around a long time. And really from '05 to '08, I was just kind of figuring it out. I did not come from a sales background. I came from a finance background. So I worked for the local county here and was a finance manager for the county. So definitely, dealing with numbers and that type of thing, but not in a sales way. And so I had some friends that were in the mortgage business. A mentor of mine early on was a guy who was my loan officer when I bought homes or refinanced. And so that's who I got in the business with originally. So, he had the experience, he could kind of tell me about it. But when I got actually boots on the ground in the business, I realized like, oh my gosh, no offense to people, everybody has their own path, but if you've ever seen the movie The Big Short, which I know you have, it literally was people that were, selling cars the year before, or maybe in some cases they were, just kind of doing whatever, and they are now selling mortgages. Again, no offense to those people, but there wasn't a lot of finance knowledge that I found when I first got into this. And so when I say figuring it out, I came in under the impression of, hey, we take care of people, we educate people, we make sure that they feel comfortable with whatever mortgage program or payment that we're putting them in, and really trying to help them build their future, financial wealth. That was not the case in 2005, and really leading up to that 2008. I found that was actually very rare. Most people that I came across, they were mostly interested in, putting as many people into a loan as they could, regardless of the outcome or the perceived outcome of that loan. So I think I shared the story with you about how I almost didn't get hired by Washington Mutual because they wanted somebody with 5 years experience, which I now think is just laughable. Number two, I almost got fired because I wasn't selling enough, quote, high margin product, which, to translate for the audience here, that is pay option arms, definitely stated income type products where you're just getting people into homes. They're happy to be in a home. So they really don't care if they have to pay more, because in a lot of cases, like in today's market, a lot of these people would not have qualified to even get into a home based on what their income and their financial portfolio was. So unfortunately, our industry had this thing going on where we were, I hate to say taking advantage, but there's really no other way to say it. We were taking advantage of people who are not financially literate, or they just were happy that they could get their family in this brand new home. They didn't care behind the scenes of how it happened or why it happened. They were just happy that somebody said yes to them. And so I didn't see things that way. I never wanted to put anybody in harm's way because, like you mentioned, I do a lot in my community. I lend to people in my community, to family, friends, the kids of people I've known for a long time. The last thing I ever wanted to do was put somebody in financial harm's way. So I didn't sell any of those products. And almost got fired for it, but ultimately I didn't. And, WAMU got completely disbanded and folded into Chase in 2008. And then that's where, like, during that period of '08, really until 2022, my business grew. And so that was kind of my growth period. So figuring it out, my growth period, where I learned a ton, not only about the mortgage industry, but just running a business, building a team, building a branch, doing all the things that where we're at to get where we're at now. But I credit my initial, work to put people in good loans and educate people in that, and that being kind of my focus. I credit that with why I grew during that period. So in hindsight, I look back, I didn't really know intimate, financial details of a lot of other loan officers during that crash. But when I ended up getting in a coaching program called the Core, I learned that a lot of really top producing loan officers lost everything during that period of time. They were over leveraged. They were just spending money like crazy because that's what they were. They were making a lot of money. Because I had come from the county, I was used to making a salary. I was used to being in the office at 7 and leaving at 7. And so that's kind of how I built my business. So I just worked hard. I educated as many people as possible. And so my business actually grew. And so, by from that period of 2013 to 2022, I kind of grew into one of the top producing loan officers in my area, and then even in the top, say, 500 in the country. So it was a really, really good run. So that was kind of the second that growth phase, and then now I'm in the let's call it the handover phase. I'm trying to figure out. I do have a plan in place, but I'm trying to kind of settle down. If you are a top producing loan officer, you work 80 hours a week, let's say. It's really hard, no matter what anybody says, even when you have a team, it's hard to not answer your phone when one of your realtor partners calls or one of your clients calls. And so because of that, people work Monday through Friday. So in the evenings you get calls, on the weekends you get calls. So you're kind of always on call. And so in this next phase of my life and my work, I'm trying really hard to figure out how to work less and enjoy life more. There was a lot of sacrifices along the way. And so, now at my age and as long as I've been in my career, I plan to stay here. I plan to continue to originate loans, but I don't want to do that at 80 hours a week anymore. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for breaking all that down. I think that's a really great description of the life cycle of a loan officer.
Yeah.
And so something that you mentioned to me previously that really stood with me or stayed with me, and it sort of goes against what is the stereotype of a loan officer. And you made a couple of comments about it as you were talking there, was that you've intentionally lived below your means while you were going through this growth phase, and you weren't even really overthinking it. Maybe it's because you started with a salary and you kind of had the household budget and things like that. But how would you say that has shaped the way that you operate within your business?
Uh, it's interesting because I didn't, like you said, I didn't intentionally do that. It's just how I was. Like, I was very focused on work. So I was very focused on helping as many people as I could during that growth period that I was talking about. I've never really been like a big car guy. I've never felt like I needed to have the biggest house on the block or anything like that. So, lived in a good neighborhood, belonged to a country club, but it's just, it's a neighborhood country club. It's not, the premier country club in our area or anything like that. So the expenses aren't super high, but I've always enjoyed, you know, people, and I enjoy the group of people that are there. So I've just never really, gone that extra step of, hey, I'm going to, have this big house in the best neighborhood and belong to the best country club, drive the fanciest cars. It's never been my thing. So I was just focused on working, and I was making a lot more money than I was spending. Now, I do have to credit Rick Ruby a little bit in the core, where I early on in my life, I didn't have a good experience with the stock market. And it's just because I thought I needed to go in and I needed to research and pick stocks and things like that. And I ultimately, didn't invest in stocks. I bought rental houses and things like that. Well, once I got in the core, I started religiously putting money in the stock market. And so that would have been like 2016 timeframe. And so now, that's really grown over the last, I guess, 8 years here. Well, almost 10 years now. So, that's grown, and that's helped as well. Is, it took money away from where I could just spend it and just invested it. And then again, I had that mindset of like, I go to work to help people. I don't go to work necessarily to make money. So when I would have some really, especially during COVID, some really big months, I was investing a really, high amount of money every month in the stock market. I'm just putting it over there and like in the S&P 500, right? And so it's just growing and growing and growing. And so that's really been a huge part of my journey as well, and why I'm in a position now where, as much as I want to continue to help people, I don't have to. It's not, I'm not, going to go broke if I never close another loan. And so that's a pretty powerful place to be. Like I said, I want to continue to do this. I enjoy it, but I can do what I enjoy now. I don't have to, if it's a client or a real estate agent or referral partner or somebody that just, it's not clicking, it's not fitting well, then I'm totally fine, letting everybody move on from those now. Whereas before I would have maybe jumped in and tried to do anything I could to keep that relationship.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. Like when you establish the financial freedom first, you can start making those other decisions that establish the other freedoms
Yeah.
that allow you to operate within, your comfort zone and really kind of have the business that you want to have. And I know you've said that the motivation was never really about the money. I'm paraphrasing what you just said, but it was, it wasn't about the money. It was about just helping people. And I love that perspective. But you also mentioned that you really want to be known as like the go-to expert. Where do you think that standard comes from?
I don't, I've often thought about, what happened in my childhood or my life that made me really want to be, known as the expert. And I can't really put my finger on it. I think, I think what has happened over the years is I've just helped people and helped them in the best way I could. And then I look at the advice that some people are getting from others in our industry, maybe their bank, their credit union, and that, realizing like I I am helping these people retire someday. I'm helping these people be in a position to weather a storm, and I have lots of those stories that I can look back on and go, wow, you know, if I hadn't convinced that person that they needed to become a homeowner, that when their child got sick and they needed to access funds, the $500,000 in equity that they had built, that they were able to take a HELOC against and help, for their health care, and that wouldn't have happened. Right. And we all know the statistics on homeowners versus renters and things like that. But I really have built my business on the belief that the cornerstone of everybody's financial picture is their primary residence. So you got to
Mm.
start by getting into a primary residence. And the cool thing is there's amazing opportunities for people. There's down payment assistance in most states. If you're a military veteran, zero down, USDA, there's ways for everybody to get into a home. And so I've just seen so many cases where the person who took the leap, that they listened to somebody and they got into a home, that they have really turned their life around financially to where at some point, they will retire. Whereas if you rent, you know, and some of these people, like, that's generational in their family. Like, they're the first person to own a home in their
Right.
family and they're going to retire. And I think that what we don't realize yet in our country, because, at my age, my parents had a pension. Okay. Well, we all know that pensions went away.
Hmm.
So, like, the next generation, their parents don't have pensions. So, what's retirement going to look like? I think it's really up in the air right now because most people do not have nearly enough money saved to live off of.
Right.
So, that's where I think our industry is so important, because we can take somebody, like I took my son when he wanted. He said, "Dad, I want to work at a pizza place down the street." He was 15, so I had to sign the form. So I said, "Okay, here's the deal. If I sign this form, you're giving me 50% of your earnings." So now he's 20 now. He has more in a Roth IRA than most people have saved,
Mm.
because I took the money from him. So it's the same thing when you tell somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck that they can buy a home and they have to make their mortgage payment, right? It's a forced savings plan. So all they have to do is make their mortgage payment and take care of the house. And at some point in time, even if they never move, they're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars net worth, versus if they just lived in an apartment or rented a house and spent all that money every month.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I've got two teenage daughters, so I'm going to have that conversation with them
Yeah.
tonight about the paycheck. We'll see how they how they feel about it. But I love the idea. I mean, it's a great, and you make a great point. And sometimes it is just about getting started and then having that discipline to not touch it and know that there's a brighter future ahead with it, and rainy day, all that kind of stuff. So but yes, home ownership, certainly the cornerstone, I think, of wealth in this country. Now, something that we've talked about before that I want to get into a little bit is this concept of being like the mayor of your town. You've
Mhm.
mentioned it a couple of times, just being very committed to the community and deeply rooted in things. How does a loan officer go about doing that? And or what's been your approach, at least? Like, how have you sort of been giving back to the community that you're a part of?
Yeah. I mean, really, I started this before I got into the mortgage business. So I had been, on the board at my country club, which it's a neighborhood country club. So it's the neighborhood that I grew up in and live in. It's all intermingled around the country club. So there's a lot of people who are also neighbors that are members and that type of thing. So I was on the board. I served as president in 2004, so the year before I got in the mortgage business. And then, just been involved in charities and auctions, and as I have built my business, now I'm able to, take the money that I make doing this and helping my neighbors and give back to the communities by supporting school auctions. If realtors have a specific charity that they're really passionate about, I'm one of those people that I just feel like, hey, there's a lot of folks out there that need help. And so I try to, support my agents' charities. I try to support my friends' charities and things like that. So I don't necessarily just give, say, 10% of my income to one source. I spread it around. And so, that's given me a lot of joy too, because I know that there's people out there hurting, and that they need that. And I'm also supporting my community that way. So one of the things that we started doing probably about 10 years ago now is the last day of school. There's an elementary school that's in our neighborhood. And the last day of school, we do an ice cream social. So that it's been kind of funny, because I'd never asked permission from the HOA or anything. I contracted with Ben and Jerry's ice cream truck, and they
Mhm.
pulled up. And we kind of put the word out on social media. And I think the first year we probably had maybe 200 kids show up to get ice cream. Free ice cream travels fast.
Hey,
So a lot of people knew
yeah.
about that. Last year we served over 700 scoops. And now we work with a local ice cream shop that's in the neighborhood as well to do that. So we're kind of helping them and promoting them. And so a couple years ago, I had the HOA president call me and he says, "Hey, you're able to get a lot of people to show up to your event. We can't get that many people to show up to our event. Will you help us?" So I gave him some tips and things like that. But I think it's one of those things where I don't capture. So I'm not there saying, "Oh, fill out this, form so you can win a prize," or anything like that. I'm not interested in capturing business. It's not about business at all. It is about giving back to the community. And I'm a big believer in the go giver principles. Whereas the more value you bring, the more you're going to get back. And that has been 100% true, because a lot of what I do is not expecting to get business,
Mm. Yeah,
right?
I love that you're, not having anybody fill anything out, and you're just showing up to do a good thing, and to make people happy, and to make some kid's day. Like, I mean, yeah, if the HOA needs to drive people to their event, just get free ice cream,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Like,
that's probably the number one tip I gave them is, hey, free ice cream, that
get free ice
sells,
cream.
so you can get more people to your thing. But you're so right though about like how it's just giving back to the community. And I mean, it's cool. I went to that elementary school a long, long time
Yeah.
ago. I went to the same elementary school. So I'm able to stand up there and I'm able to talk to these kids that, they're kindergartners or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, did you have, Mrs. Smith or whatever?" And I'm like, "No, I think my kindergarten teacher is probably passed on now." But yeah, no, it's just cool. Everybody has a great time. Families come and they plan for it. So they've set up volleyball nets now. They're playing. There's a guy who is big into pickleball, so he does a little pickleball training thing at the pickleball courts. And there's just tons of families in here. We've been very blessed with sunny weather, and so it's been a really good thing. And we're doing it again here the middle of next month, and super excited about it. And you know, I will I get business from it? Probably. I probably
Yeah.
will. Somebody's going to call
But you don't
me.
have to ask for it at
I
that
don't have to
point,
ask.
right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what's great about it. I mean, I think people feel when they're being sold to, right? Or when
Uh-huh.
there's an ulterior motive to what you're doing. And, for anyone not familiar with the go giver concept in the book, I mean, it really is just do good by others and good comes back to you, right? Like, don't worry about, setting it up for a capture form and this, that, and the other thing, but just go do good things. And so I think, especially within the context of helping your community and doing things with the school or whatever it is, you know people can sniff that out if you've got a motive that or an agenda for being there other than just being a good person. And so I think you're doing it perfect, all right. So that's awesome. Now, you, as we kind of wrap up here, we've talked about a lot, and I wanted to get into just sort of where things are for you today, because you mentioned it earlier there at the beginning of the episode, and kind of how you're in this handover phase and really working towards getting to where you're not doing the 80 hours a week, but there's just more intentionality into the usage of your time that is your time, right?
Great.
So
Yeah.
as you get nearer and nearer that goal, like, what does the perfect work week look like for you 5 years from now?
Yeah. So 5 years from now, my goal is really to come to the office only when I feel like coming to the office, do whatever I want to do on a daily basis. And so if I decide, hey, I would like to come to the office, I'd like to hang around people and do some work and that type of thing, that's going to be my goal. Other than that, I will be, you know, giving back more to the community. So I'll be at community events, that type of thing. I mean, at that point, maybe I'll look to serve on some boards or something like that, just to do something with my time other than play golf and pickleball, which I enjoy doing. But really have my team, and then, another loan officer that I'm going to partner with, kind of take over the day to day. And so have most of the conversations with clients and things like that. And then make sure that our systems are still dialed in and that we're providing top class, first class service, which has been always our big thing. Is I've been very blessed to surround myself with people who truly care like I do about the success of our clients and our referral partners and that. And so because of that, mantra that I've always had is we want to give that first class service. I've been able to surround myself with those people that want to do the same thing. And so that's really my goal 5 years from now. We'll see. Every
Yeah. Well,
day, as we know, the best laid plans don't always work out, but
right.
that's where we're at now. So I would like to, continue to help people for the next 5 years and then transition over that 5 year period to, really helping others grow their business and that type of thing.
Well, I think what you've done is, I mean, just looking from the outside looking in, from my perspective, you've built a valuable business where you've built a team, you've got someone in place where there's some investment happening there in them and just like helping them grow as a professional, as a loan officer. So you've laid the groundwork for everything that you want to achieve. It would be difficult for someone to pull that off if they were a solo show and they just someday wanted to just turn it off and say, hey, I'm just going to show up when I want to show up, right? So you've got all the infrastructure in place, and now it's just about finding the opportunities to start letting go of more and being selective about how you do that. So I think you're set up for it. It's just now it's about the transition.
Execution, right?
Yeah,
Execution.
right. So anyway,
It's
well,
just like my golf
Greg,
game. Like I know how to hit the shot, but can I hit
yeah.
the shot?
Can I hit this shot? Well, hey, we've talked about a lot, Greg. I want to give you an opportunity if there was something that you had on your mind walking into this today that we haven't had a chance to talk about, or I didn't ask you, a question about it, just to have the floor and share whatever you feel might be important, or and if there's nothing, that's fine. But I just want to give you kind of the opportunity to speak your mind.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, for people coming into our industry, first I want to let you know there's going to be a need. There is a need. There's going to continue to be a need for people that are coming into our industry that truly can provide advice and sound help for people. There's a lot of folks out there that need to have somebody pull them along financially, and we're in a position to do that. So don't get discouraged by all this stuff with AI and all that. I think AI is going to play a big part, but there's still going to be a lot of people that need our help. The last thing I would say is if you're coming into this industry and you're not where you want to be, surround yourself with people who either are doing more production than you or have done more production than you, and find out their story. Because I think a lot of people come into this and then they get frustrated because it's just not there overnight. Well, obviously, if you got into the business in 2020 or, something like that, the business was just there. There was business mortgages falling from trees at that point. And so now we really have to work to pour into our referral partners, pour into our communities like we talked about, and just be that resource for people. And eventually all the business that you want will be there.
Love that. Love that. Well, Greg, I appreciate you being on the lowdown and for sharing just your perspective and, wisdom from the industry. And, wish you nothing but the best in the future. But thanks for being a part of the show.
Hey, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on, Connor. Thank you so much.